My name is Norma Galbraith. I am 64 years old and I live in Midland, Ontario. For 3 years before he died, my husband kept an old shortbread tin on the second shelf of his workshop in the basement. Green metal, the lid gone a little rusty at one corner, a strip of masking tape on the side with his initials written in black marker. He told me about it exactly twice. The first time was the winter of 2020, on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. He came upstairs from the workshop still smelling of sawdust and said it the way he said most things. Flat, no lead up. If something happens to me, there's a tin on the shelf down there. Don't let anyone else open it first. I told him not to be morbid. He said it wasn't morbid, it was practical. The second time he mentioned it was 2 weeks before he died. He was 68, lung cancer, diagnosed in March, gone by the following January. We had been married 41 years. The family gathering happened on a Saturday in February, 22 days after the funeral. 11 people, folding chairs pulled from the garage, a tray of Nanaimo bars my sister-in-law had brought. My daughter's husband ran it. He stood at the head of the table in my own kitchen in the way that certain men do when they have decided something is theirs to run. He had been appointed estate trustee the week before. My daughter handled the paperwork. The two of them sat with the lawyer together, and I was told afterward. "Don't worry, Mom," my daughter said. "We've got it handled." She said it the way you say it to someone who is already worried too much about too many small things. My daughter's husband is a careful man. He manages money for a living. A financial planning firm in Barrie with his name on the door. He is good with numbers, and he knows it, and he reminds you with tone rather than with words. He stood at the head of my kitchen table, and he laid it out. The estate had the house, which I'd stay in for now. The RRIF my husband had converted before he got sick, which would roll directly to me. Some tools, a truck, a savings account, and the duplex on Hugel Avenue. 2 rental units, both occupied, built by my husband's father in 1962, in the family ever since. "The duplex," he said, "is going to need some decisions." He smiled when he said it. Not unkindly. More the way you smile when you're explaining something to someone you're not sure will follow. There's still a line of credit secured against it, and we need to evaluate whether it makes more sense to continue renting or to sell and clear the liability. Obviously, Norma, we want to make sure you have what you need. We're thinking something in the range of a comfortable monthly allowance while we work through it all. A comfortable monthly allowance. In my own kitchen. My sister-in-law nodded at everything he said. She has done that for as long as I've known her. It isn't malicious. She just agrees with whoever is standing. My son, who had driven 4 hours from Sudbury in the February dark to be there, looked at me across the table. He didn't say anything. I shook my head slightly. He looked back at his coffee. That evening, my daughter sent me a text with a link. A retirement residence on King Street. 2-bedroom units available. Little balconies, an activities calendar. Her message said, "Just so you have something to look at. No rush at all. Uck!" The exclamation point is what I remember. I went to bed at 10 and lay on my husband's side because mine felt too wide. I thought about the tin on the workshop shelf. I thought about the line of credit. I had never once seen a statement for it. I thought about my daughter's husband managing the rental deposits for the last 11 months, since my husband had been too sick to do it himself. I thought about the comfortable monthly allowance and the fact that nobody had mentioned a number. At 10 past midnight, I got up and went downstairs. I should tell you what I did for 31 years, because it matters later. I was a pharmacist at Georgian Bay General Hospital here in Midland from 1988 until I retired in 2019. I started at the dispensary window, worked my way into the clinical pharmacy role on the 3rd floor. The position where you're not just filling prescriptions, you're sitting in on rounds, reviewing medication reconciliations, answering the phone at 2 in the morning when a resident has ordered something that doesn't look right. The job is not glamorous. It is one thing, over and over. You read the label. You read it again. You check the order against the chart. You check the interaction database. You ask the nurse to read it back to you out loud while you watch, because a decimal in the wrong place, Not a catastrophic mistake, not an obvious one. A single decimal point can stop someone's heart inside 40 minutes. 31 years, 2 internal audits, no findings, no reportable incidents. And in my own house, I had never read a thing. The house was in my husband's name. The truck was his. The duplex had been in his family before it was in ours, and I had never thought to ask whose name was on the title. He managed it. I managed the household. We had a system, and the system worked, and I had been, without thinking much about it, the kind of woman who handed over a pile of papers and got on with supper. I turned on the workshop light at midnight. It smells like sawdust and linseed oil in there, even now. The workbench runs along the left wall. His tools are still hung in the exact order he had them. The second shelf holds a coffee can of drill bits, a jar of hardware sorted by size, and the tin. It was heavier than I expected. I set it on the bench and lifted the lid. Inside, a USB drive in a small Ziploc bag, 2 folded documents, and a sealed white envelope with my name on the front in his handwriting. Just Norma. No last name, no explanation. I didn't touch the envelope, not yet. The first document was a single folded sheet inside a standard trifold. Transfer deed of land, Province of Ontario. My husband's name as transferor. My name, my full name, middle initial and all as transferee. The property description matched the Hugo Avenue address, line by line. Registered at the Land Registry Office, Barrie. Date, January 15, 2017. I read the numbers 3 times before I let myself take a breath. The second document was the registration confirmation from the registry, 1 page, same date, same file number. I got his project notebook from the bench drawer and I inventoried everything. Same as I'd inventory a medication tray at the start of a shift. You don't guess. You lay it out, you count it, you write down what you have. 1. Transfer deed of land, registered January 15, 2017. My name as owner. 2. Registry confirmation, same date. 3. USB drive, contents unknown. 4. Sealed envelope addressed to me. Then I sat on the wooden stool by the bench, and I did not get up for a long time. January of 2017. 7 years ago, that was the winter our youngest grandchild was born. My husband had driven into Barrie on a Tuesday and come home at lunch and said he'd been running errands. I'd asked what errands. He'd said, just some paperwork. I hadn't pushed it. I never pushed it. That was us. My daughter's husband had managed that duplex for 11 months without once mentioning that the title was in my name. It had been in my name for 7 years before that. I picked up the envelope and put it back down. I wasn't ready for a letter from a dead man at 1 a.m. in a cold basement, so I opened the USB drive instead. He had labeled the folders neatly. Scan deed, 2017, scan lock statements, scan rental ledger. I opened the rental ledger first. He had kept it in a spreadsheet, updated every month. 2 units. Unit A, $1,850 a month. Unit B, $1,650 a month. $3,500 a month total. 2 long-term tenants, 1 family in since 2011, the other since 2015. Page after page, tidy and regular, right up until March of last year, the month he got the diagnosis. He'd kept entering the data himself until June, when the treatments had taken enough out of him that he'd asked my daughter's husband to step in. June through January, 8 months, 8 rows, and beside each one, a deposit account number I didn't recognize. I wrote the number in the notebook. Then I sat in the cold with my hands in my lap and I did the arithmetic. $3,500 a month, 8 months, $28,000. Collected on a property registered in my name, deposited to an account I had never heard of. I did not cry. I think I was still in pharmacist mode. The part of the brain that says don't react yet, you don't have the full picture, finish reading the label. I called my son from the bedroom with the door shut. It was past 2. He picked up on the 3rd ring. I read him the document titles one at a time. Transfer deed of land, January 15, 2017. Registration confirmation. Rental ledger, 8 months to an unidentified account. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mom, you need certified copies from the Land Registry. Not what's in the tin, the registry copy." I asked why when I was holding the originals. He said, Because a piece of paper in a tin proves you have a piece of paper. A certified registry copy proves it's in the public record. Nobody can argue with that. He asked if he should drive down. I said, not yet. I said it in the same voice I used on residents who wanted to rerun a test because they didn't like the first answer. The Simcoe County Land Registry Office is in Barrie, about 50 minutes south on the 400. I drove there on a Thursday morning with the registration number written at the top of a notepad. The woman at the counter had her reading glasses on a chain and a cup of tea going cold beside the keyboard. I told her I didn't know what I was looking for. She said, "Most people don't." She asked for the property address and the file number. She had it on screen in under a minute. Transfer, deed of land, registered January 15, 2017. Transferor R. Galbraith, transferee N. Galbraith. She looked up at me over her glasses. "Is that you?" I said yes. She printed the certified copies. 42 pages at $1 a page, 2 certification stamps at $5 each, $52 cash. She gave me a receipt. I want to say this clearly because it is the whole point of everything that came after. That document had been sitting in a public index in Barrie since January of 2017. My husband's name in the grantor column. My name in the grantee column. Any member of my family could have walked into that office on any weekday between 8 and 4:30, spent $52, and found it in a single afternoon. Nobody ever did. On the way home, I stopped at Tim Hortons and sat in the parking lot with a medium coffee and called a lawyer. If you've ever sat in a car in a parking lot in Ontario in March with a certified land registry document on your passenger seat, you know the particular quiet I mean. Leave me a comment and tell me what province you're in. I read everyone. And if you want to hear how the mediation went, stay with me. That night I read the line of credit statements from the USB, line by line with a ruler. My husband had carried the line since 2009, used it to fund the renovation on Unit B, and had paid most of it down by 2018. The balance at his death was $41,000. Not nothing, but not the leveraged liability my daughter's husband had implied in my kitchen with that careful, patient smile. I wrote the number down. Then I wrote the $28,000 beside it. Then I went to bed. The lawyer's office is in Barrie, second floor above an insurance broker on a side street, stairs that announce every step. She is 58, has done wills and estates in this county for 26 years, and she told me her hourly rate before I had my coat off. I appreciated that. Clarity up front is a professional courtesy. I put the green tin on her desk and let her read. She read for 15 minutes. She made a sound once, a small one. When she reached the rental ledger rows with the unrecognized account number, then she set it down. She said, "Mrs. Galbraith, for your daughter's husband's current position to hold, that property has to have been part of your husband's estate on the day he died, but it left your husband's estate on January 15, 2017. It has been registered in your name for 7 years and 3 months. There is nothing for him to administer. He has been managing your property without your authority." She asked if he had ever provided me with a rental statement. I said no. She asked if I had received any portion of the rental income since my husband became ill. I said no. Then she told me the part I hadn't asked yet. My daughter's husband had filed a trustee fee claim from the estate account the previous month, $8,500. I didn't say anything. She said, "You paid for the funeral." I had $16,400 4 days after the burial because the funeral home had called and the estate account wasn't accessible yet. He had said he'd sort it out. It had not been sorted out. She gave me 2 columns on a legal pad and turned it around so I could read. Left column, what was mine outright, nothing to do with the estate. The duplex. The $28,000 in rental income collected from my property without my knowledge. Right column, what was in the estate, the house, the truck, the savings account, the RRIF, which transferred to me directly anyway under the beneficiary designation. Then she walked me through the Succession Law Reform Act, the spouse's preferential share, the distribution formula, and she said that my husband's estate, once debts were cleared, left me substantially better positioned than a comfortable monthly allowance. "Did your daughter's husband tell you what your entitlement was likely to be?" she asked. I told her about the comfortable allowance, the retirement residence link, the exclamation point. She looked at me for a moment, then she said, "Let me show you what the act actually says." The letter went out on a Wednesday by registered mail, return receipt requested. 3 pages, her name at the top, my name as instructing client, the facts, the registered transfer of January 15, 2017. 8 months of rental income deposited to an unidentified account, the unreimbursed funeral expenses, the trustee fee drawn without court approval. The green card came back Friday. My daughter's husband called that evening at 8:30. He was not loud, he was precise, which is how he gets when he is frightened. He said the title transfer had been a formality, something my husband had done for tax planning that was never intended as a real transfer of ownership. He said I was getting bad advice from someone who didn't understand the whole picture. He said my husband would have wanted the family to handle this together. My husband had stood at a counter in a Land Registry Office in Barrie, transferred a property into my name, paid the registration fee, and driven home and said he'd been running errands. A formality doesn't go in the public record. I said I would let the lawyers talk. My daughter called the next morning. She cried. She said she hadn't known anything about the title transfer, and I believe her. She didn't know. She said I was tearing the family apart. She said our grandchildren would be caught in the middle. She said all the things a person says when she's frightened and loves someone and has also been letting someone else think for her for 15 years. I said, "I know you didn't know. I didn't know either." A pause. She said, "Then why didn't Dad just tell you?" I didn't answer yet. I had one more thing to read first. I went to the workshop that night and sat on the stool and opened the envelope. 1 page, both sides, ballpoint pen dated January 14, 2017, the day before the registration. Norma, by the time you read this, I'm gone, which means someone has already told you the duplex is part of the estate. It isn't. I registered it in your name yesterday morning. I've thought about telling you for 3 years, and every time I started, I talked myself out of it. Here's why. You are the most precise person I know. You don't miss a detail. But when it comes to the people you love, you make exceptions. If you'd known in 2017, you'd have told our daughter. She'd have mentioned it to her husband over dinner without meaning any harm. And he'd have had 7 years to find a way to undo what I'd done. I watched that man with money for 15 years. He is not a bad person. But he is the kind of person who believes assets belong to whoever is managing them. He's been handling the rental collection since your TZ's made it hard for you to go over there with me. In his mind, that makes it his file. You spent 31 years counting things no one else thought were worth counting, 1 wrong decimal. You never let it happen, not once. Now count this one. The tin is yours. The building has been yours since yesterday. I'm sorry I didn't say it to your face while I was still there to say it. I was afraid you'd talk me into telling her, and I was afraid of what I already knew he would do with the information. You've never been soft, you've just been quick in one direction only. Be slow this time. I sat in the workshop for a long time with the page on my knee. Then I went upstairs and put the kettle on, because at some point your body decides it needs something to do. And standing there waiting for the water, I heard my daughter's husband again in my kitchen 3 weeks after the funeral. Something in the range of a comfortable monthly allowance, said with that careful smile. Said to a woman who had spent 31 years not missing a decimal. He had the arrow pointing the right direction. He just had the wrong property in the frame. The mediation was held in April in a boardroom at a law office in Barrie. Long table. A carafe of coffee in the middle, 4 lawyers and 3 principals on either side. My daughter's husband sat across from me in a suit and tie. My daughter sat beside him, hands folded on the table, She did not look at me when I sat down, but she also did not lean into him the way she sometimes does. She just sat with her hands folded and looked at the middle of the table. His lawyer was polished and thorough. He argued the transfer had been made without independent legal advice. He argued that because my husband had not informed me, the beneficiary, there was uncertainty of intent. He said the rental income had been managed in good faith as part of a good faith estate administration. He said the trustee fee was standard and appropriate. And then he said, and I am quoting, because I wrote it down, that I was clearly acting on advice from counsel unfamiliar with the full family context. That is a pleasant way to say, a woman my age could not have arrived at this herself. My lawyer stood up. She had 4 pages, and she read them the way I read a medication order, slowly, each word in the right order, no performance. Exhibit 1. Transfer deed of land, registered January 15, 2017. Transferor, R. Galbraith. Transferee, N. Galbraith. Certified copy from the Simcoe County Land Registry. Exhibit 2. Registry confirmation notice, same date, same file number. Exhibit 3. Rental deposit records, 8 months. Account ending in digits that do not correspond to the estate account. Total, $28,000. Exhibit 4. Funeral invoice paid personally by my client on January 28th, $16,400, not reimbursed. Exhibit 5. Trustee fee of $8,500 drawn from the estate account on February 11th, prior to court approval. She set the papers down. This property left Mr. Galbraith's estate 7 years and 4 months before he died. Nothing in the subsequent estate administration changes that. My client's daughter's husband has been managing her property without her knowledge and without her authority. The mediator looked across the table. Counsel, was the land registry searched at the commencement of the administration? My daughter's husband's lawyer glanced at his client before answering. We proceeded on the information available to us from the estate. My daughter looked at her husband. He did not look back. My lawyer was not finished. Exhibit 6, a letter dated January 14, 2017. She asked if she could read a portion aloud. The mediator nodded. She read the part about the tin. She read the part about assets belonging to whoever manages them. She read the last 2 lines out loud in that flat, unhurried voice. You've never been soft. You've just been quick in one direction only. Be slow this time. The room was quiet for a moment. My daughter's husband said, "That's a private letter. That's a sick man writing to his wife." His voice was different now, not precise. Something underneath had shifted. The mediator said, "It goes to intent. Let's continue." They settled it that same afternoon. The duplex stays in my name, always was, no claim against it. The $28,000 in rental income returned to me within 30 days. The $8,500 trustee fee returned to the estate. The funeral expenses, $16,400, repaid in full from estate funds. The rest of the estate administered by a professional trust company, with my daughter's husband removed as estate trustee. My share from the estate, under the Succession Law Reform Act, came to just over $270,000 once the debts and costs cleared. We came out into the hallway at 10 minutes to 4. That thin April light through the window at the end of the corridor. Ontario's spring light that still feels like it might change its mind. My daughter's husband went ahead of her through the stairwell door and didn't look back. My daughter stopped in front of me. She looked the way she looked when she was 17 and had broken something she couldn't fix. She said, "I didn't know about the title transfer. I really didn't know." I said, "I know that." A long pause. "Why didn't he just tell you?" "He could have told you. You could have decided together." I said what I understood by then. "Because if I'd known, I'd have told you. And you'd have mentioned it to your husband without meaning any harm, and he would have had 7 years to work around it. Your father wasn't keeping a secret from me. He was keeping me from giving it away before I understood what I had." She stood in that hallway for a moment. Then she said, very quietly, "That's not fair to you." I said, "No, it wasn't." She left. I didn't call her back. Here is what happened after, in order, because talk is easy and dates are not. In May, the professional trustee filed a complete inventory. Every account, every asset, every liability, properly documented, clean work. In June, the $28,000 arrived by direct deposit. The funeral money followed 4 days later, $16,400, 4 months, and 16 days after I'd paid it out of my own savings. Nobody made a ceremony of it. It simply arrived. In July, my daughter came to my kitchen on a Sunday morning and sat at the table for an hour. We did not talk about the mediation. We talked about her children. I made eggs. She cried a little in the car before she left. I could see her from the kitchen window. I let her. In August, the estate closed. In September, I bought a bungalow on 3rd Street here in Midland. Low ceilings, solid bones. A kitchen window that looks down toward the bay if you stand just right at the sink. The deed says Norma Galbraith. Just that. My name in the middle of the line, the way you'd write it on a form. The green tin is on the shelf above the kitchen table. Arthur's letter is folded inside exactly as he had folded it. I've read it 11 times. I am not going to read it a 12th. I know it. My daughter's husband repaid the funds without comment. He has not been to this house since April. My daughter comes Sunday mornings when she's in town. We don't discuss it. That is, for now, enough. I told my son on the phone the night it was all settled. He said, "Dad knew what he was doing." I said, "Yes, he just needed me to know it too." Here is the only piece of advice I have, and it is not a clever one. That title document had been registered in a public index in Barrie since January of 2017. 7 years. My name in the grantee column. Anyone in my family have driven down on any weekday, paid $52, and found it in 30 minutes. Nobody went. I went because my husband left me a tin and asked me to be slow. You do not win because you are the smartest person in the room. You win because you are willing to spend one afternoon reading something that has been sitting in plain sight the whole time. 31 years counting pills no one else thought twice about. 1 decimal in the wrong place and someone doesn't come home. My husband knew exactly what kind of woman he had married. He just needed me to know it too. Go read the paper with your name on it before someone else reads it for you. That's all. Welcome to Bold Mom Stories. This is where women over 60 tell the stories their families would rather they kept quiet. Drop a comment and tell me what province you're in. If this reminded you of a document you've been meaning to look at, go look at it this week. Not next month. This week. Subscribe if you want to hear what comes next. I'll see you there.